And welcome to the colourful scene for the 1983 Arai 500 endurance race for superbikes and production motorcycles. It's the 1983 Australian Grand Prix meeting coming to you from Mount Panorama, Bathurst, and it really is a spectacular scene there as 58 of Australia's best riders line up alongside the pit counter about to have their Le Mans start for this 81-lap race, 499.93 kilometres. And John Smales, who joins us in the commentary today, it's going to be a beauty.
Neil, it certainly is. We're looking at a shock last-minute entry as we see Andrew Johnson walk across the track there to join his teammate Malcolm Campbell in the Team Honda team. But they've been joined by the Suzuki rider, Rob Phillis, who will be riding the prototype Honda Formula One bike, the most expensive bike in the race. There it is there, bike 2, worth $60,000. That's Rod Cox, who's riding a Suzuki in the race, who's been looking with great envy at the Honda. As we now look at the field lining up with the Le Mans start about to occur, the riders have to run across the track, go to their bikes held by their mechanics, start and blast off on 81 laps.
The machines will be running, the crews are holding the bikes, the riders are making their way across to the other side of the circuit. There's Andrew Johnson and Malcolm Campbell from Team Honda Australia, Rod Cox, who John just mentioned a couple of moments ago, and of course this is the race debut for Honda's brand new V4 860cc superbikes. They've only been in the country for about 7 to 10 days, and the Honda camp have been working very hard indeed to make sure that these bikes are in readiness for today's meeting. They've practiced very well, and as you can see, Johnson and Campbell at the head of the field for the start of this race. And as I said, it's going to be 81 laps. The riders are ready, and off they go in this short little sprint across the circuit to the crews, and out of the gate they go in the first of their 81 laps around the Mount Panorama course, 6.1 kilometres, and it's Andrew Johnson who goes straight into the lead at turn 1 and along the big mountain straight. 10 cameras in total on Channel O's coverage this weekend, and already a fall.
2 of them.
One of the Ducati riders there on the Panther. Can't quite pick up their numbers, John. As the field streams to the top of the mountain. Bike number 30, and that's Greg Reynolds. And there's Andrew Johnson, our leader on the V4 Honda. Bike number 7, the Victorian rider, fresh from a win in the 1983 Western Underwriters Adelaide 3 Hour. And he's got pressure on him from Rob Phillis, it looked like, in second place. We'll have a closer look as they come down.
You can find that's Paul Feeney on the Morawaki. Oh, and Johnson was very, very wide into that corner there, really throwing the V4 Honda around behind him. I think it's Feeney on the Morawaki Kawasaki. This bike, the Works machine, which Wayne Gardner used to win the Swan Insurance Series 2 years ago, and which Graham Crosby debuted at this circuit 4 years ago. It has a new 1000cc engine in it, and young Feeney from Goulburn in New South Wales is really flying in second position as they head now down Conrod Straight, heading for 270 kilometres an hour with these big 1000cc 4-strokes, really pumping 11,000 RPM.
And into the braking area, it looks like Andrew Johnson, who goes underneath bike number 8. And his teammate there, Mel Campbell, on bike 12. So the Honda's going very quickly indeed as they come along pit straight to end lap number 1.
And the Honda's just overwhelmed Feeney as now Rob Phillis moves up into 4th position. Formula One bike, $60,000 worth of sophisticated machinery. Phillis only on his 3rd lap ever on this machine. Phillis picked up this ride only this morning after asking Team Honda whether he might be allowed to ride the bike which otherwise would be sitting in the pits. He got clearance from his own Suzuki sponsors, who shook his hand and very sportingly said, "Best of luck, son." And now Rob Phillis moving up into 3rd position, tailing Andrew Johnson and Malcolm Campbell.
Bike number 56 there, and that's Neil Shivers on the Suzuki, one of the riders expected to do very well in the production class, a man who's won here before in the production class, a rider who is suited to this type of riding, can pace himself, settle down into the groove and work his way up through the field. And as we mentioned at the outset of the commentary, these machines, the production bikes that the riders are using with the red number plates, are machines that will gradually work their way to the head of the field as many of the superbikes fall into mechanical trouble and make a lot of fuel stops. But as John mentioned a few moments ago, Team Honda hoping to get away with 2 stops, although they're quite prepared for the 3rd if need be. And there's Andrew Johnson in that forceful riding style that everybody knows him so well for. across the top of the mountain, now plunging down.
Phyllis in second position. And Phyllis is going to have to be very careful with this machine. The reason that Johnson elected not to ride the Formula One bike was because to get it through 500 kilometres here at Mount Panorama, you have to be very careful how hard you rev it.
Here's the battle for the lead, and it looks like Rob Phillis on bike 2 has got through and taken the lead at the 4-lap mark of the Arai 500. So the man who's only done 4 laps on this machine already heads the race as Team Honda runs away with this event in bikes 2, and that's Rob Phillis. Bike 7, Andrew Johnson, who changes his line on that occasion as he sees the yellow flag, and then bike number 12, Malcolm Campbell. Well, that's a real turn-up.
Certainly is. Not only the yellow flag, though, but you'll notice there's a lot of sand right over the apex of that corner, and the rest of the riders are going to have to be very careful. Great humps of Bathurst, each of them with potential disaster for the riders as they've got to struggle to keep their wheels on the deck as the 3 Hondas now come down into the braking area. Mal Campbell with Rob Phillis right behind him and Andrew Johnson on the outside. Johnson going for second position and gets it from Phillis. Now Johnson out after teammate Campbell. Campbell, Johnson right behind him going for the braking underneath. He won't do it. And that's the sand trap at the top of Skyline, and my goodness, bike 10, Gary Cheer from New Zealand on the Honda, and that sand trap, which was put in only 2 years ago, saves another rider. The O28 helicopter now winding its way up through the S's, heading up to the cutting. The leaders. And the news comes, it's Johnson back in the lead. With Campbell right behind him, and Rob Phillis has dropped back to 3rd position. Sweeping through the top of the S's. Upwards of 130 miles an hour through McPhillamy Park with your knees scraping on the deck. As Andrew Johnson now, AJ, takes back the lead from his 2 Honda teammates across over Skyline. Having to watch out for the prang with Cheer over the top. Track's been cleared. The O28 helicopter being flown by Terry Lee, having to go to slingshot onto the straight to keep up with these improved production and prototype machines, capable of more than 280 kilometres an hour as they storm down Conrod Straight. And Andrew Johnson. Now another lead change. It's Malcolm Campbell back in the lead. Behind him, Rob Phillis. Oh, and there goes Johnson. Johnson coming straight into the pits. But whether that's intended or not, he's just veered straight off and coming straight to the pits. He's only 25 minutes. He pulls up at his pit now. He's off the bike and he says that's it. And he's looking at the rear of the bike and at the rear tyre. And I think that the rear tyre has just gone straight off. And Johnson reckons there is no point in persevering with a tyre that's threatening to throw him off the machine. And here's that great scrap in the production bike race between Rod Cox, Neil Shivers and the New Zealander Bob Toomey as they dive down into the braking area at the end of Conrod Straight. It's Cox in the lead. Toomey on the inside. Shivers back into 3rd place, and these bikes not slow in comparison to the super bikes. They do about 230, 240 kilometres an hour down Conrod Straight, about 40 kilometres an hour down on the super bikes.
Johnson sitting back on the super bikes, so the problem seems as though it may have been rectified. A new wheel has been put back in the machine. Wolfenden refueling the machine, which of course should be something that all crews do when they come back into the pits to ensure that they can minimise the amount of stopping time later in the race. So Johnson back on the bike. Certainly now with no chance at all at an outright victory. Can certainly offer a lot of support to his teammate out there who's still in furious battle with Rob Phillis. That's Malcolm Campbell we're talking about.
Johnson's bike was on a fairly hard compound, 796 Dunlop on the rear, the 18-inch rear. Johnson kicks off into the pits, pump starting the bike, and he's away. But of course, that's cost him the best part of a lap.
And there's the leader, bike number 2. It's the Formula One bike, and Phyllis goes into the pits. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see just what happens here. So, as we were speaking before, there's that possibility of the fact that Johnson is going to have the advantage of a topped-up tank, but there's Phyllis in the pits. The hose goes on. He's been in the pits now for just under 5 seconds. The crew having a look around the bike to make sure that everything's okay. They're giving Robbie a drink. You can see Mick Hone there in the white and red T-shirt with the black cap. He's the usual team leader of the Mick Hone Motorcycle Suzuki team. And the bike comes out. It's about 20 seconds. So a 20-second stop for Rob Phyllis on bike number 2 as he comes out of the pits.
A cool, uncomplicated stop for Rob Phyllis. No apparent haste, and yet only 23 seconds in the pits. And let's now hear from Will Hagan.
Mick Hone, a bit unusual to be leading the Arai 500 race with your rider, Robbie Phyllis, on a Honda. How did that come about?
Well, we did have a deal signed up with Greg Hansford, but he couldn't accept the ride, and we decided that we didn't want to run our own super bike, so we had a free rider, and we were lucky enough to park next to Honda in the pits, and they had a free bike, and they just sort of fell together, and it's a fairy tale.
When was the deal done?
About 6 o'clock last night. We just had to get the okay from the Japanese at Honda, and they said, yeah, sure. And Suzuki agreed. There was no clash of sponsors or anything, and you know, I think...
And Rob, in fact, hadn't ridden the bike before the warm-up lap for today's race?
No, he hadn't even sat on it. We started up this morning. He just sat on it and made sure everything was there. And once he got on the bike, we said take it easy till he run in the tyres and learn the bike. But he was in front in 3 laps and he was doing it easy. So I think that shows, you know, what a good rider he is.
He was in front, into the pits in just under an hour. That seemed a bit short.
Well, we didn't want to take any chances. We've got enough lead up our sleeve now, 68 or 70 seconds, that we can afford to do an early pit stop and not risk running out of petrol. So we went for percentage.
What about the bike itself? It was the bike that Andrew Johnson decided not to ride because he said it's really quick if you rev it to 11, but to keep it reliable, ultra reliable for 3 hours, you have to drop the revs to 9, so he stayed off it. Is that what Rob's doing? Is he keeping the revs down?
Rob's always been easy on machinery, and I'm sure that he's not over-revving it or doing it hard. You know, he's just happy that he's got the opportunity to ride it, and I'm sure he'll do the job.
Mick, I know you want to build a new Suzuki Superbike, and you haven't had a great deal of help from Suzuki. Is this to spike them a bit, the fact that you've got Rob onto a Honda?
No, this was done with Suzuki's blessing. They realised that if they haven't got a machine for him to ride in a particular race and one's available, they're not that small-minded that they'd stand in his way and retard his progress into whatever he can achieve in racing.
Thank you, Mick Hone.
All right, there's
And
bike 8.
That was the bike that was holding second place in the race, bike number 8, and we saw the machine slowing down at the end of Conrod Straight on their last lap. So Paul Feeney in trouble, and our new second place is Andrew Johnson. And this forceful and determined rider starting to fall in now. His teammate for one day, Rob Phyllis on bike number 2, pushes the brand new V4 860cc Works Honda to its absolute limits as he negotiates the 6.1 kilometre mountain.
2 laps now remaining for Rob Phyllis, and his heart must be in his mouth, because to come from absolutely nowhere this morning, not even having a ride in this event, to suddenly find himself the winner of the most prestigious superbike endurance race in Australia is a real breakthrough for the Australian superbike champion, Rob Phyllis.
And has been consistently picking up $12.50 per lap from Arai helmets as the lap leader. And he'll be in line for $2,000 in outright prize money, together with another $1,000 for taking out the improved touring section of this race.
Across the top of the mountain for the second last time, Rob Phyllis waves already to the crowd. A very popular rider in Australia, was voted in fact by Revs Motorcycle News, the readers of Revs Motorcycle News, the most popular man in Australian motorcycling for 1982, and he certainly deserves the crown. 258 kilometres an hour is the fastest time that Rob Phyllis has been recorded at down Conrod Straight. We would have expected a time slightly faster than that, or a speed rather than faster than that from him, but it indicates just how much he's been nursing the bike through this race. He goes through getting the blue flag. He is on his last lap, 6.2 kilometres of the Mount Panorama circuit remaining for Rob Phillips.
Let's have a look and see whether we can see the gap between Cox and Shivers, who's riding bike number 56. That's Cox on the right-hand side of screen on bike number 40. And you remember at our last check, he was gradually starting to open up the gap over himself and Neil Shivers. Glances over his shoulder. There's Shivers, and he's got 1 lap to go, so you can see that the gap has stretched. And I think that Rodney Cox has just dealt out the final blow to Neil Shivers in the concluding stages of the Arai 500.
The big crowd at the top of the Mount Panorama circuit going wild for Rob Phillips as he flings it through McPhillamy Park, taking no chances now. The flag marshal's out at the side of the track. You can hear the crowd, even above the roar of the 028 helicopter, as he charges down through the S's, going for the big victory that was so unexpected for Rob Phillips. Wheelie down through the dipper, that time just for fun. And what a magnificent ride from Rob Phillips.
And he's certainly covering some territory at the moment as he gets up to around about 260 kilometres per hour for the last time, past the drive-in on the right-hand side, and he can switch it off and coast from here because Rob Phillips is going to take out the 1983 Arai 500, pops a final mono wheel as he comes down towards the braking area, and he's going to be a very happy man indeed. Under brakes for the last time, clicks down through the gears, peels off to the left-hand side and approaches the checkered flag, and a fine win to Rob Phillips in the 1983 Arai 500.
And the victors in the Arai 500, Rob Phillips from Andrew Johnson. Paul Walkley was the first in the improved production class. Then Rod Cox and Neil Shivers winning the production class.